My son and his wife walked into my shop and demanded $600,000. The same son who threw his pregnant 17-year-old daughter out in the rain 11 years ago. The same daughter I took in when she had nowhere else to go. Now they see the business we built together, the success we fought for, and they think they deserve a piece of it. "We're family," his wife said. "You owe us." I looked at them standing there in my office, entitled, confident, a cult pastor beside them smiling like he had already won. They had no idea what I had been preparing for years. They threatened to destroy everything, our reputation, our customers. They said they would tell everyone I stole their daughter and manipulated her. The same daughter they called a disgrace. The same daughter they threw away like garbage. My granddaughter stood beside me, the woman she had become, strong and unafraid, and I reached into my desk drawer. What came next, they never saw coming. Because when you abandon your child, you lose the right to profit from her survival. And I was going to make sure they understood that. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. I was counting receipts at the kitchen table when the knock came. I remember the dull yellow light, the slow tick of the cheap clock, and how peaceful it all was right before I stood up. In this building, you get used to other people's noise. There was nothing friendly about the sound on my door. It was urgent and sharp, not the kind of knock you hear from someone who wants to borrow sugar. When I opened up, I found a girl on my porch. She stood in a puddle that spread from her shoes, rain dripping into the collar of a coat she had outgrown. Her hair was wet and tangled, and half her face was hidden, but there was no mistaking those eyes. Jason's eyes, my son's, soft in the corners, but now rimmed red and braced for bad news. I had not seen her in more than a decade. Not since her parents decided I was a corrupting influence and cut me from their lives. By now, Hannah was nearly grown already, 17 years old. Though the way she stood there, she looked as lost as the day they took her from me. She met my gaze, and her voice cracked on the first word. "Grandma Eleanor." I answered by holding the door wide, not just in invitation, but in certainty. When the world lights someone on fire, you do not make them beg for water. She ducked inside, half flinching, as if expecting me to change my mind. I closed the door behind her and turned the deadbolt. She huddled against the wall, damp hair stuck to her forehead, both hands clutching a plastic shopping bag to her chest. Knuckles gone white. She looked just like a child who had been outside too long, except she was carrying something heavier on her back. I found my old blue towel hanging by the radiator. It was warm and thin, perfect for a night like this. I handed it over, and she pressed it to her face. There were no thank yous and no further explanations. I did not need them. Her whole body was trembling. "Sit down before you fall down," I said. She took the nearest chair at the kitchen table, still gripping that bag. "I did not know where else to go," she said. The words came in a single piece. Now that she was inside, her voice was what gave out. "They threw me out. Tonight," Michelle said, I had shamed the family. Dad just stared at the wall. She told me to pack and go and make peace with God outside her house, because there was not any left in it for me. She kept her eyes on the pattern of the tabletop like she could disappear into it. I busied myself filling the kettle and setting out 2 clean mugs. There are things you do that are not about kindness so much as protocol. A way to tell the world it has not broken your routine, only rearranged its meaning. I glanced at the wall and could not keep my voice quite as steady as I would have liked. "I take it your father did not disagree with her? Am I right?" Hannah shook her head. A tear slipped down her cheek and she wiped it away with the corner of the towel. He just looked past me like I had turned invisible. My mom said, "You made your choice. Now live with your consequences." She asked for my phone and my house key. Just held out her hand like she deserved it. Said a long prayer to Pastor Mark Collins' God. She called me an example. An example for the other girls to see what happens to sinners. Her voice twisted on the last word. She was not much older than a child, and all I could think was how familiar the cruelty sounded. When my son and his wife found the Hopewell Fellowship, their new family, I was the first person they cut loose. They called me unfit, said I would infect their righteousness if I stayed in their lives. Jason delivered the message himself, with Michelle waiting in the car. That was 13 years ago. I tried to visit Hannah at her 5th birthday and found the door locked and the curtains drawn. "Did they let you bring anything else?" I asked quietly. She dumped out the plastic bag on the table. Her movements jerky, a change of underwear, one clean shirt. The Bible they gave her was still at the bottom of the bag, its gold letters almost flaking off. She did not touch it. All Mom said was, "Maybe now you will understand what it means to be humbled." She said, "If I prayed hard enough, maybe God would take me back." Asked me if I was sorry. I said I was sorry for ever believing her. That was when she slammed the door. The kettle groaned. I filled both mugs and slid hers across the table. I handed her a plate with 2 slices of bread and a thick pat of butter. The way Hannah ate, you would think she had walked for hours. She did not meet my eyes again until her 2nd slice. "The boy is from church, too," she said, touching her belly, her voice a whisper now. "Ethan, when I told him I was pregnant, he said it was not his. He would not even look at me. He told me to keep my mouth shut or I would ruin everything for him." She pushed her plate away. I think he is more scared of Pastor Mark Collins than anything else. When Mom found out who he was, she said it only proved what she already believed about temptation. She wanted me gone so she could tell everyone it was my fault and his family would not have to pay the price I did. I let the ugly picture sit for a time. It was not the time for comfort, not when truth needed its own seat at the table. "How far did you walk?" She shrugged. "All the way from their house. I did not know where else to go. Thought about staying at the library, but they close at 10:00. I remembered your street. I was not even sure if you would let me in." She was shivering now, mug pressed tight in her palms. "The cold is not your fault," I said, "and neither is their stupidity." I got a blanket from the closet and draped it around her shoulders. Soft, but not special. Ordinary objects for extraordinary circumstances have their own dignity. I sat across from her and folded my hands, letting her speak if she wanted. After a while, she did. "I thought maybe you hated me for who my parents are." That landed harder than anything so far. I took a slow breath. "No, I never hated you. I hated what they became, but I always wondered about you. Every birthday I kept hoping they would snap out of it. Never expected them to turn on their own daughter. Or maybe I did, and that is why I kept a clean pillowcase in the closet." She tried to smile. "They have rules for everything," Hannah said. "What you eat, who you talk to, what you think about men. Pastor Mark Collins breaks them all and still gets to stand up in front of everyone. He says God forgives, but he only forgives the ones who obey him." "Michelle thinks I am the one that corrupted her family. They always did blame the wrong people," I said. She finished her tea and sat quiet again, looking somehow more present and more spent at the same time. "You can sleep on the sofa," I told her. "In the morning, we will talk about what comes next. You are safe tonight." I gave her another blanket and made sure she had water. She lay down stiff and shivering, shoes still half on, like she was afraid of being told to leave in the night. I left the lamp on in the hall. I have handled enough emergencies to know that sometimes what people need most is just to see that the darkness is not complete. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the spot where my son used to sit when he was her age. I wondered if there was something I missed when he was growing up. Some sign that faith would become cruelty when it was paired with power. I resolved not to miss any sign in Hannah that pointed to bitterness or surrender. The clock ticked, and the apartment settled back into quiet. That night, I did not sleep much. Her breathing became slow and even, the first sound of hope in my old apartment in years. I watched dawn come in soft through the blinds, and I decided, no matter how everything else turned out, I was not going to let Hannah pay twice for someone else's mistakes. Some families throw people out, some open the door. The first morning, Hannah woke before I did. I came out of my bedroom and found her sitting upright on the sofa, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. The blanket had slipped to the floor. She looked like she had been awake for hours. "How about some coffee?" I said. She nodded but did not move right away. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on sliced bread, found the butter. By the time I turned around, she was standing in the doorway, arms crossed tight over her stomach. "I do not know what I am supposed to do," she said. I set a plate in front of her. "Eat first, then we will figure it out." She ate slowly, chewing like she was thinking through every bite. When she finished, I handed her a dish towel and nodded toward the sink. "You can start by helping me with dishes. Then we will go to the shop." The shop was 3 blocks away, a narrow storefront wedged between a dry cleaner and a tax office. The sign out front said, "Walker's Organics," in faded green letters. I had opened it 7 years before, after my husband died, and left me with a mortgage and no plan. It was small. 5 aisles, a cooler in the back, and a register that jammed if you hit the buttons too hard, but it paid the rent, and some months it paid more than that. Hannah followed me inside and looked around like she was cataloging exits. "Stock goes on the shelves by category," I said. "Canned goods here, dry goods there. If someone asks a question and you do not know the answer, come get me. Do not guess." She nodded. I handed her a box cutter and a stack of invoices. She got to work without asking for more instructions. I liked that. The first customer came in around 9:00. Mrs. Whitaker, who bought the same 6 items every week and liked to talk about her grandson. She glanced at Hannah and raised an eyebrow. "New help?" she asked. "Family?" I said that was all I gave her. Mrs. Whitaker looked like she wanted more, but I turned back to the register and she let it go. Hannah worked quietly, keeping her head down. She made mistakes, put the soup in the wrong section, priced the tomatoes by the pound instead of by the item. I corrected her without making a scene. She learned fast. At lunch, I showed her the back office, a desk, a filing cabinet, and a calendar covered in my handwriting. I pulled out the ledger and walked her through the numbers. Income, expenses, profit. She listened with her arms folded, brow furrowed. "This is how you survive," I said. "You track every dollar. You do not guess, you do not hope, you count." She picked up a pen and started copying figures into a notebook. I left her to it and went back to the floor. By the end of the week, she could run the register without help. By the end of the month, she knew the regulars by name. I did not ask her about the baby until she brought it up herself. "I have an appointment next week," she said one evening as we locked up at the clinic. "I will take you," I said. The appointment turned into appointments. Hannah's belly grew slowly at first, then all at once. I bought her maternity clothes from the thrift store and made sure she ate more than toast. She started online classes for her high school diploma, working through modules late at night after the shop closed. When the baby came, it was fast and hard. Hannah labored for 14 hours in a room that smelled like bleach and fear. I stayed beside her the whole time, holding her hand, when she needed it and stepping back when she did not. When Chloe finally arrived red-faced and screaming, Hannah cried for the first time since that night on my doorstep. I took the baby while the nurse cleaned Hannah up. Chloe was small, wrinkled, and loud. I wrapped her in the hospital blanket and rocked her until she quieted. When I handed her back to Hannah, I saw something in my granddaughter's face that had not been there before. Not happiness exactly. Resolve. "We are going to be okay," Hannah said. I believed her. The first year was hard. Chloe cried at night, and Hannah learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. I helped when I could, but Hannah wanted to do most of it herself. She fed, Chloe changed her, rocked her to sleep, and still showed up at the shop every morning by 8. I watched her grow into it the same way I had watched her learn the register. One mistake at a time, one correction, one small victory. By the time Chloe turned 2, Hannah had finished her diploma and started taking business courses online. She had ideas, good ones. She suggested we expand our produce section, start carrying local honey, add a small section for bulk grains. I let her try. Most of it worked. The shop grew not overnight, but steadily. We added a second location 4 years later, then a third. Hannah managed the new stores, while I kept the original running. She hired staff, negotiated with suppliers, built relationships with farmers I had never heard of. She was good at it, better than I had been at her age. Chloe grew up between the aisles. She learned to count by stacking cans, learned to read by sorting labels. By the time she was 8, she could run the register as well as any adult. Customers loved her. She was polite, quick, and had Hannah's smile. We were not rich, but we were stable. We had a rhythm. Morning shifts, inventory checks, evening counts. Hannah cooked dinner most nights. I helped Chloe with her homework. We did not talk about Jason or Michelle. There was no point. They had made their choice, and we had made ours. When Chloe turned 10, a journalist contacted us. She was writing a feature for a regional business magazine about family-owned companies. She wanted to profile us. Hannah was hesitant, but I said yes. We had nothing to hide. The interview took place at the original shop. The journalist, a woman in her 30s with a recorder and a notebook, asked about our story. I told her the basics: widowed, started the business, brought my granddaughter in to help. Hannah added her part. Single mother, built a career, expanded the company. Chloe sat beside us grinning. The photographer took pictures us behind the counter, us stocking shelves, the 3 of us standing in front of the store. I watched Hannah smile for the camera and thought about how far we had come. The article came out 2 months later. The headline read, "From Nothing to Thriving, a Family Success Story." There were photos of all 3 of us, quotes about perseverance and community, a sidebar about our expansion plans. Hannah bought 4 copies at the newsstand and brought them home like trophies. That evening, we closed the shop early and went out to dinner. A small Italian place 2 blocks over, the kind with red checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles, Little Napoli Trattoria. Chloe ordered spaghetti and got sauce on her chin. Hannah laughed, wiping it off with a napkin. I watched them across the table and felt the weight of 11 years settle into something I could almost call peace. "We should celebrate more often," Hannah said, raising her water glass to family. Chloe clinked her glass against ours, grinning. I lifted mine and nodded. The word family had a different shape now than it did when I was young. Smaller in some ways, stronger in others. When we got home, Hannah hung the framed article in the back office right above the desk where she did the books. She stood back and admired it, hands on her hips. "This is proof," she said, "that we made it." I nodded, but I did not share her certainty. Proof was one thing. Protection was another. The next morning, I opened the shop as usual. Mrs. Whitaker came in and congratulated me on the article. So did the mailman, the woman from the dry cleaners, and 3 customers I had never seen before. By noon, the phone had rung 4 times with people asking about wholesale orders. Hannah fielded the calls with confidence, taking down names and numbers, promising follow-ups. I watched her work and felt the old worry creep back in. Success had a way of drawing attention, and attention was not always kind. For 11 years, we had built our life quietly without fanfare or interference. Now our faces were in a magazine Heartland Business Review. Our story was public, and anyone who wanted to could find us. That night, after Hannah and Chloe went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the article spread in front of me. I read it again slower this time, looking for anything that might have given away too much. Our address was not listed, but the name of the shop was. The neighborhood was mentioned. Anyone with half a mind could figure out where we were. I thought about Jason and Michelle, about all these years of silence, about the way people like them measured family by utility and love by obedience. I thought about what they would do if they saw this article, if they saw Hannah's face older now, and smiling, if they saw Chloe healthy and happy, proof that their judgment had been wrong. I folded the magazine and set it aside. There was no point in worrying about things that had not happened yet. But I made a mental note to keep the shop's financials organized, to make sure every receipt was filed, every tax form submitted on time. If trouble came, I wanted to be the kind of prepared that left no room for accusations. I also decided to keep my eyes open, to pay attention to strangers who lingered too long, to phone calls that did not sound quite right, to anything that felt out of place. We had worked too hard to lose what we had built. Before I went to bed, I walked through the apartment one more time, checked the locks on the doors, the windows, the latch on the fire escape. Everything was secure. Hannah's door was cracked open, and I could hear Chloe's soft breathing from the other room. The sound was steady and peaceful. I stood there for a moment listening. This was what mattered. Not the magazine, not the recognition, not the business. This, the three of us, safe and together. But I also knew that safety was not permanent. It was something you had to protect every day with every choice. And I was willing to do whatever it took to keep it. I turned off the hall light and went to bed. Tomorrow, we would open the shop again, serve customers, count the register, go home. The routine was the same, but something had shifted. We were visible now. And visibility, I had learned, always came with a price. I just hoped we were ready to pay it. 4 days after the magazine hit the stands, we received an unpleasant visit. I was in the back office sorting invoices when Hannah poked her head through the door. "There is someone here to see you," she said. Her voice was tight. "2 people." I looked up. Her face had gone pale. I set the papers down and followed her to the front of the shop. They were standing near the register. Jason looked older, grayer around the temples, his shoulders hunched in a way that made him seem smaller than I remembered. Michelle stood beside him, her posture rigid, hands clasped in front of her, like she was waiting for a sermon to start. She wore a long skirt and a high-necked blouse, the same uniform of modesty she had always preferred. I stopped a few feet away and looked at my son. His eyes met mine for half a second, then slid away. Eleanor Michelle said, "Not mother, not even a greeting, just my name, flat and cold." "Michelle," I said. "Jason?" Jason shifted his weight, but said nothing. Michelle's mouth thinned. "We need to talk," she said privately. I glanced at Hannah. She had moved behind the counter, arms crossed, watching them like they were something dangerous that had wandered in off the street. I nodded toward the back office. "Follow me." The office was small. 3 chairs, a desk, a filing cabinet. I sat behind the desk. Jason and Michelle took the chairs across from me. Hannah stood in the doorway, not quite inside, but not leaving either. Michelle wasted no time. "We saw the article," she said, "about your business." I waited. "It's impressive," Jason said, quietly. "What you've built?" Michelle shot him a look, and he fell silent. She leaned forward, hands still clasped. "We've come to discuss family obligations," she said. "The Hopewell Fellowship has been struggling financially. Jason and I have given everything we have to support the church. We have nothing left." And then we see this. She gestured vaguely, as if the magazine were sitting between us. We see that you've been thriving, that our daughter has been living here working for you all these years. She did not work for me, I said. She worked with me. There's a difference. Michelle ignored that. As her parents, we have a right to share in what she's built, what you've both built using our child. Hannah made a sound in her throat, something between a laugh and a cough. Michelle's eyes snapped to her. You have something to say, Hannah? Yeah, Hannah said. I have a lot to say, but I am going to let Grandma handle this. Jason finally looked at his daughter. His expression was unreadable. Shame or just exhaustion? We are not here to fight, he said. We just need help. Help, I repeated. Michelle straightened. We're asking for $600,000. It's a reasonable amount given the success of the business. We're family. Families help each other. I let the number sit in the air for a moment. $600,000. A sum that would force us to sell at least one location, maybe two. A sum they had decided we owed them, and if I say no, I asked. Michelle's smile was thin and sharp. Then we will have no choice but to tell people the truth. That you stole our daughter. That you manipulated a vulnerable teenager and turned her against her own parents. Tell them about the teen pregnancy, about how you hid her away and built a business on her shame. People do not like that kind of story. It will ruin you. I leaned back in my chair. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face still. I need time to think about it, I said. Michelle smiled. Of course, we will give you 4 days, but after that, we will have no choice but to take action. She stood. Jason followed. They walked to the door and Michelle paused, looking back at Hannah. You could come home, she said. If you wanted, we would take you back. You and Chloe, you just have to leave her. She nodded at me. Hannah's laugh was cold. I am home. Michelle's expression hardened. Then you have made your choice. They left. The door chimed as they walked out. I sat in the office, hands flat on the desk, breathing slowly. Hannah came in and sat down in the chair Michelle had vacated. They are insane. They are desperate, I said. What are we going to do? I looked at her. She was calm now, focused, not the scared girl who had shown up on my doorstep. Not even close. We are going to talk to the lawyer, she said. Make sure everything is in order, and then we are going to wait. Wait for what? For them to make the next move. Hannah frowned. You think they will come back? I know they will. She was quiet for a moment. I am not afraid of them. Good, I said, because this is going to get worse before it gets better. The next morning, I called our lawyer as I promised Hannah to calm her down. Andrew Miller had handled the business contracts when we expanded. He was thorough, practical, and did not ask unnecessary questions. I told him about Jason and Michelle's visit, about the money, about the threats. Do they have any legal claim, I asked. Not unless they can prove coercion or fraud, Andrew said. And from what you are telling me, they cannot. Hannah was an adult when she started working with you. She made her own choices, but the publicity angle is trickier. They could damage your reputation, even if they do not have a legal case. I understand, I said. But I already knew that could happen, and I was actually prepared. I thanked him and hung up. That afternoon, Jason and Michelle came back. This time, they were not alone. The man with them was tall, late 50s, with silver hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He wore a dark suit and carried himself like someone used to being listened to. This is Pastor Mark Collins, Michelle said. He is the leader of our church. He wanted to speak with you. I looked at the pastor. He extended a hand. I did not take it. Mrs. Walker, he said smoothly, I have heard so much about you. I am sure you have. He smiled. I understand there has been some tension between you and Jason and Michelle. I wanted to see if I could help mediate. There is nothing to mediate, I said. They asked for money. I told them I would think about it. Family is complicated, Pastor Mark Collins said. But the Bible is clear. Children are to honor their parents. It is one of the 10 Commandments. I looked at Hannah. She was standing beside me, arms crossed, glaring at the pastor. Hannah honored her parents, I said, right up until they threw her out for being pregnant. Pastor Mark Collins' smile did not waver. Sometimes love requires hard choices. Jason and Michelle were trying to guide their daughter toward righteousness. They guided her to my door, I said. The pastor chuckled as if I had said something amusing. You have done well for yourself, Mrs. Walker. A successful business, a loving family. Surely you can spare something to help those in need. The church is in need, I asked. The church serves many people, he said. And yes, we have hit some financial difficulties. Donations have been down. We are struggling to keep the doors open. Jason and Michelle have given everything. They are living in poverty because of their devotion. I glanced at Jason. He would not meet my eyes. So this is not about family, I said. It is about money for the church. Pastor Mark Collins spread his hands. It is about helping those in need, which I believe is also a commandment. Michelle stepped forward. We have brought a written request, she said. She pulled a folded paper from her purse and set it on the counter. It outlines what we are asking for. $600,000 and a public acknowledgement that Hannah's success is partly due to the values we instilled in her. I picked up the paper. It was typed formal and absurd. I will consider it, I said. Pastor Mark Collins' smile widened. I hope you will. It would be a shame if this situation became public. Businesses can be fragile things. One bad story and customers start to wonder. Suppliers start to ask questions. It is hard to recover from that kind of damage. The threat was clear. I folded the paper and set it on the counter. I will let you know, I said. They left. The door chimed again. Hannah let out a breath she had been holding. He is a manipulator, she said. Yes, I agreed. What are we going to do? I looked at the paper on the counter at the door where they had just exited at the shop we had built together and said, Leave that to me. You already suffered too much because of them. I told them to come back on Friday. 3 days to consider their offer. I said 3 days to get my affairs in order. They agreed, probably thinking I needed time to figure out how to liquidate assets or beg the bank for a loan. They had no idea what I was really doing. I spent those 3 days making phone calls. To Andrew Miller, our lawyer, to Paula Reed, the private investigator, to Laura Stevens, the journalist, who had been quietly building her own case against the Hopewell Fellowship for the past 24 months, and to Special Agent Daniel Kim at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, a man I had been corresponding with for over a year. When Friday came, I was ready. They arrived at noon, just as I had asked Jason Michelle and Pastor Mark Collins. I met them at the door of the shop and led them to the back office. Hannah was already there, sitting in the corner with her arms crossed. I had asked her to be present. She deserved to see this. Pastor Mark Collins settled into the chair across from my desk like he owned it. Jason sat beside him, hands folded in his lap. Michelle stood, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the room like she was looking for something to criticize. Have you made a decision? Michelle asked. I did not answer right away. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. It landed on the desk with a satisfying thump. Pastor Mark Collins glanced at it, then at me. What is that? He asked. This, I said, is everything I know about you. I opened the folder slowly. The first page was a photograph. Pastor Mark Collins standing beside a silver Lexus, keys in hand, grinning at the camera. The car was new, expensive, the kind of vehicle that cost more than most people made in a year. I slid the photo across the desk. Nice car, I said. I did not realize church donations were so generous. Pastor Mark Collins' smile faltered. That was a gift. From who, I asked. I pulled out another photo. This one showed a lakefront vacation home, large and modern, with a wraparound deck and floor-to-ceiling windows. And this, another gift. Michelle stepped forward. What are you doing? I ignored her. I pulled out a stack of bank statements, each one marked with yellow highlights. These are financial records from the Hopewell Fellowship's accounts donations from members, most of whom are living below the poverty line. And here I tapped one of the highlighted lines is a transfer of $60,000 to an account in Pastor Mark Collins' name marked as consulting fees. I looked up at him. His face had gone pale. There are more, I said. Dozens of transfers over the past 6 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars all funneled from the church into personal accounts. Yours mostly, but also. I glanced at Jason. Some went to your son and daughter-in-law. Jason's head snapped up. That is not true. I slid another document across the desk. A bank statement with his name on it. $25,000 deposited 3 years ago, labeled as a ministerial stipend. Funny, I did not realize you were a minister. Jason stared at the paper like it might bite him. Michelle's voice was sharp. Where did you get those? I hired someone, I said. A private investigator years ago, actually right around the time Hannah came to live with me. I wanted to know what kind of people had thrown out their own daughter. What kind of organization convinced them it was the right thing to do. I leaned back in my chair. The more I learned, the more concerned I became, not just for Hannah, but for everyone trapped in that church. So I kept digging. And when the business started to grow, when we expanded and became more visible, I knew it was only a matter of time before you noticed, before you decided we owed you something. Pastor Mark Collins leaned forward. This is slander. No, I said calmly. It is evidence. I pulled out another stack of papers. These are testimonies from former members of the Hopewell Fellowship. People who were coerced into giving money they did not have. Families who were torn apart because they could not meet the church's financial demands. A woman who lost her home because Pastor Mark Collins convinced her that tithing 50% of her income was the only way to secure her salvation. I looked at him. Her name is Helen Brooks. She is 62 years old and living in a shelter now. But you already knew that, did you not? Pastor Mark Collins said nothing. Michelle's voice was cold. You cannot prove any of this. Actually, I said I can because I have already given copies of everything in this folder to the FBI. Special Agent Daniel Kim has been investigating financial fraud and tax evasion within religious organizations. The Hopewell Fellowship is now officially under federal investigation. The room went silent. Jason looked like he might be sick. Michelle's hands were shaking. I also gave a copy to Laura Stevens. I continued. She is an investigative journalist. She has been working on a story about your church for 24 months. My files gave her everything she needed to go to print. The article will be published next week. Pastor Mark Collins stood abruptly. You have no right. I have every right, I said. You came into my shop and threatened me, threatened my family, demanded money you did not earn and had no claim to. You thought you could manipulate us the same way you have manipulated everyone else. But you were wrong. I stood as well, meeting his gaze. You were already finished before you walked through that door. Michelle turned to Jason. Say something, but Jason just sat there staring at the floor. Pastor Mark Collins' voice was sharp. This is harassment. We will sue. Go ahead, I said. My lawyer is expecting it. And when you do all of this, I gestured to the folder. Becomes public record. Every transaction, every testimony, every lie you have told. Is that really what you want? He did not answer. There was a knock on the door. I opened it. 2 men in dark suits stood in the hallway, badges clipped to their belts. Mrs. Walker, one of them, said, "I am Special Agent Daniel Kim. We spoke on the phone." I stepped aside. "Come in." The agents entered. One of them looked at Pastor Mark Collins. Mark Collins. The pastor's jaw tightened. "Yes, we would like to ask you some questions about financial irregularities at the Hopewell Fellowship and about an attempted extortion that was reported to us earlier this week." Michelle's voice rose. "Extortion? We did not extort anyone." Agent Kim pulled out a small recording device. "Mrs. Walker recorded your last visit, the one where you demanded $600,000 and threatened to destroy her business if she did not comply. That is extortion under federal law." I had not mentioned the recording. I wanted to see their faces when they realized how thoroughly I had outmaneuvered them. Jason finally looked up. His voice was quiet. "Mom." I looked at him. My son, the boy I had raised, the man I barely recognized. "You threw out your daughter," I said. "You let that man," I nodded toward Pastor Mark Collins, "convince you that cruelty was righteousness. And when you saw that she had survived without you, that she had thrived, you decided you deserved a piece of it. Not because you loved her, because you needed money." Jason's eyes were wet. "We were desperate." "You were selfish," I said. "There is a difference." Agent Daniel Kim gestured toward the door. "We need you to come with us, all 3 of you." Pastor Mark Collins tried to argue, but the other agent cut him off. "You can cooperate now, or we can make this more difficult. Your choice." They left quietly. Jason looked back once, but I did not meet his eyes. Michelle walked out with her head high, still clinging to whatever dignity she thought she had left. Pastor Mark Collins muttered something about lawyers. When the door closed, the office was silent. Hannah stood and walked over to me. She did not say anything. She just put her hand on my shoulder. I looked at the folder on the desk, at the years of preparation that had led to this moment. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel relieved. I just felt tired. "Is it over?" Hannah asked. "Not yet," I said. "But it will be." She nodded. We stood there for a moment, the 2 of us in the small office we had built together. Outside, the shop was still running. Customers were still shopping. Life was still going on, and we were still standing. The news broke on a Tuesday. I was restocking the produce section when Hannah called me over to the register. She had pulled up an article on her phone, headline bold across the screen. "Cult leader arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme." I read it standing there, hands still smelling like apples. Pastor Mark Collins had been charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. The article mentioned the Hopewell Fellowship by name. It detailed years of financial exploitation testimonies from former members and ongoing investigations into other church leaders. Jason and Michelle were mentioned too, smaller charges mostly related to the extortion attempt. Their names were buried in the 3rd paragraph, but they were there. "How do you feel?" I asked Hannah. She set the phone down. "I do not know yet." That was honest. I appreciated that. Over the next few weeks, more articles came out. Laura Stevens published her investigative piece in a national magazine. It was thorough, well-researched, and damning. She interviewed former members, included financial records, and laid out a pattern of abuse that stretched back decades. My name appeared once in a sentence about how victims' families had helped bring evidence to light. Hannah's name was not mentioned at all. We had asked Laura to keep her out of it, and she had honored that. The Hopewell Fellowship began to collapse. Members left in droves. Some went to other churches. Some stopped going to church altogether. A few reached out to me, thanking me for what I had done. I did not know what to say to them, so I kept my responses brief. "You are welcome. I am glad you are safe now. Take care of yourself." Andrew Miller called with updates. Pastor Mark Collins was facing 18 years in federal prison. Jason and Michelle had accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation community service, and a permanent restraining order preventing them from contacting me, Hannah, or Chloe. They would not be going to prison, but they would be marked. Their names were now tied to a scandal that would follow them. I did not feel victorious. I felt something closer to relief. One evening after we closed the shop, Hannah and I sat in the back office with cups of tea. Chloe was at a friend's house, so it was just the two of us. Hannah stared at the wall, her mug untouched. "Do you think they will ever apologize?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded. "I did not think so either." "Does that bother you?" She thought about it. "Not as much as it used to. I spent a long time waiting for them to see what they did wrong, but I do not think they can. Or maybe they just do not want to." "Probably both," I said. She picked up her mug and took a sip. "I am glad you were ready for them." "I am glad you were too." She smiled a little. "I was not. Not at first, but I trusted you." That meant more to me than any article or legal victory. A few weeks later, Laura Stevens called. She was writing a follow-up piece focusing on the families who had escaped the cult and rebuilt their lives. She wanted to include us, but only if we were comfortable. I told her I would think about it. Hannah said yes immediately. "People need to know it is possible," she said, "to get out to be okay." So we did the interview. It was shorter this time, less about the business and more about resilience. Laura asked good questions. She did not sensationalize. When the article came out, it was respectful and honest. There was a photo of the three of us standing in front of the shop smiling. Chloe held a sign she had made herself. "Family is who shows up." I liked that. Business picked up after the articles, not because people felt sorry for us, but because they respected what we had built. We signed contracts with 2 new distributors and started planning a 4th location. Hannah handled most of the negotiations. She was good at it, better than I had ever been. I watched her work and felt proud in the quiet way you feel when you see someone you love become who they were always meant to be. One afternoon in late autumn, I was in the back office going over inventory when I heard Chloe's voice from the front. She had come straight from school, backpack still on, asking Hannah where to put the new shipment of canned beans. I walked out and found them together. Hannah pointing to the shelf, Chloe nodding seriously, like she was being given instructions for surgery. It was the same way Hannah had looked 11 years ago when I taught her how to stock shelves. The same focus, the same determination. "Need help?" I asked. Chloe shook her head. "I got it, Grandma." I smiled and went back to the office, but I stayed in the doorway watching. Hannah showed Chloe how to check the dates, how to rotate the stock so the older cans were in front. Chloe listened carefully, asked one question, then set to work. Hannah stood beside her for a moment, then moved on to help a customer. Chloe kept working steady and sure. I thought about the night Hannah had shown up on my doorstep. 17, pregnant, terrified. I thought about the years since then, the mistakes and the victories, the fear and the hope. We had built something together, not just a business, but a life, a family. It was not perfect. There were still hard days. There were still moments when Hannah thought about her parents, when Chloe asked questions we did not know how to answer. But we had each other, and that was more than enough. That evening, after we closed, the 3 of us walked home together. Chloe was telling a story about something that had happened at school, gesturing wildly, making Hannah laugh. I walked a step behind them, listening. The air was cool, the sky fading to purple. Streetlights flickered on, one by one. We passed the park, the library, the coffee shop, where we sometimes stopped on Saturdays. Everything was familiar, safe. When we got home, Hannah made dinner and Chloe set the table. I washed the dishes while they talked about plans for the weekend. It was ordinary, unremarkable, and it was everything. Later, after Chloe went to bed, Hannah and I sat on the couch with mugs of tea. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. "Do you ever regret it?" Hannah asked. "Regret what? Taking me in, dealing with all of this?" I looked at her. "No, not even a little. Not even a little." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you." I did not say anything. There was nothing that needed to be said. We sat there for a while, the two of us in the small apartment we had turned into a home. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, we were safe. I thought about Jason, about the boy he had been, and the man he had become. I thought about the choices he had made, the family he had lost. I felt sorry for him in the way you feel sorry for someone who threw away something precious because they did not know its value. But I did not regret my choices. I had opened the door when someone knocked. I had protected the people I loved. I had built a life worth defending, and I would do it all again. Chloe called from her room asking for a glass of water. Hannah got up to get it, and I followed her into the kitchen. We moved around each other easily the way people do when they have lived together long enough to know each other's rhythms. This was the legacy, not the business, not the articles, not the justice we had fought for. This, the three of us together, safe. I looked at Hannah as she filled the glass, and I thought about the future, about Chloe growing up in a home where she was loved without conditions, about Hannah continuing to build something good, about the life we had made from nothing. It was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. So that is my story. I would love to hear what you think. Did my son and his wife get what they deserved? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.